G'day, my name's Chris Anderson and welcome to the Ando & Co podcast. Today I'm really excited to sit down with Luke from Soapbox Brewing, and Soapbox is the location where I run my first Friday of the month Beers with Mates as well. So we've known each other for quite a while, but first time getting a chance to sit down and find out a little bit more about
Hi, Chris.
all that Soapbox. Thank you, Luke.
Ando & Co. Where's the rest of the Co?
Exactly, this is just me right now.
Yeah.
So, but
A couple of lonely blokes in a pub having a beer.
Exactly, yeah. But I think partly I've actually just rebranded the podcast from Brews and Wisdom to Ando & Co. purely so that it would just be more relaxed and I can just sit down and have a conversation with someone. And so the Co is you today.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so.
Good company, no worries.
Awesome. Well, Luke, what can you tell us about yourself just to start out?
Well, we're sitting here having this conversation over a beer.
Yep.
Spend a lot of time here at Soapbox Beer. Sometimes behind the bar, sometimes in the brewery, all over the place really. We're running a small business is like that. You spread yourself around the place.
Yep.
But I guess part of it is how I ended up here, and hesitate, but the beer's the reason. Going to start by maybe introducing the first beer that we're drinking here.
Yep.
It is a conversation over a beer because we're in a craft brewery and it's all about the beer.
Exactly.
So I've got a neat little hazy to accompany the conversation today. It's a little bit fruity. We added a fair bit of bitterness to this beer just to make it beer-like, so it's not too juicy. That's how we like to consume, I guess. But yeah, it's adding to the atmosphere.
And this is the Chitter Chatter, so it's aptly named.
Called Chitter Chatter, which is why we're having a bit of a chitter chatter. Yeah, lots of our beers are named after figures of speech or something associated with conversation or associated with getting on your soapbox and having a bit of an opinion, which is exactly how our company came to be named Soapbox Beer. It's like,
Awesome.
We were having a few beers one night, as happens. We were saving the world and we decided that maybe we should probably share our opinions about other beers. But that's how we became Soapbox Beer. Have an opinion after a couple of beers and get on your soapbox.
And so when you say get on your soapbox, it's you were sitting down trying a whole lot of different beers, deciding what you liked or what you could do differently if you were to brew them yourself?
No, it had nothing to do with that.
Okay.
It was it was just a regular Saturday night having some bevies, and yeah, it as happens fairly often when you have a few beers, you do get a bit more opinionated, and happened to save the world that night and decide to open a craft brewery.
And obviously, another thing about this beer, I understand it's just won an award.
This one's picked up a bronze at the local Queensland R&A run Food, Wine and Beer Awards. We're pretty happy with that. It's fairly new categories, the hazies, so to win an award for something that we hadn't read the style guide before we made it for is pretty good. But we don't necessarily make beer to a style guide anyway, so it's we're pretty stoked to pick up a bronze there.
Awesome. And so there was that Saturday night, obviously a few beers, start to get opinionated, decide you're going to save the world and open up your own craft brewery. Where to from there?
Well, that was between that night and opening a craft brewery, there's probably 6 or 7 years of a gap to fill in, but there's only a 45-minute podcast, right? So what really happened was Scott and I, who is the other founder here, were drinking his homebrew, and we decided that was pretty good. Our kids went to school together at the time, and I think it was probably a kiddie party where the homebrew got handed around, and everyone was complimentary, and from there started making a bit of homebrew with Scott and picked up an interest in homebrew again, and we're started talking about possibilities, I guess. And one of the parents there had something to do in the alcohol industry and had made some Kirsch before. And I said, yeah, the process is all, it's age old. What could possibly go wrong? So, jump a couple of steps to talking about it a bit more freely and whether we could actually achieve it. Yeah, I got a text. Went back to work, interstate, get a text from Scott with a $60,000 Alibaba brewery on it. And this is what we need. We can do this. $60,000, we're away. Of course, that brewery wasn't to Australian standard, and it didn't contain all the bits that you need to actually make beer. It was a bit of a showpiece thing, but it started the conversation. Mm-hmm. And needless to say, our brewery didn't cost $60,000, but it was, as a conversation starter, it meant, we started embarking on something we knew nothing about, and it was an easy research starting position. It took 5 years from there. We didn't know how to write a business plan, had to learn that before you advance to the next bit. So,
and what, just out of interest, what were you both doing prior to deciding you were going to run a craft brewery together? What sort of roles were you in?
I was a cameraman, so I used to do drama, TV drama, film drama.
Yep.
And Scott was in a sales role at a corporate, and I think we were both looking for a bit of a challenge at the time.
Yep.
Maybe a different direction. I guess. Yeah, it was options. There were options there, and they all seemed attractive, and they all added a little bit of intrigue and spice to your life too. To start a brand, start a business, one that involved something clearly we both liked, being in the product, and it's product driven still. So we like beer. That's how we got into this mess. Like most big decisions, they're beer assisted.
Yeah, and so obviously thinking about that business plan, you mentioned Scott was doing some home brewing. Did you do some home brewing as well?
Yeah, I'd done some previously, and having met Scott, it got me back into it.
Yeah,
and everyone around the kids' school started to hear about it, and because of that network, we had an approach from another dad at school who said, I've actually done this before. I've set up a microbrewery over in WA. I'm no longer involved in it, but I really liked the process, and I said, my background's as an engineer. If you need a hand with sorting out your Alibaba quote, then come and see us. I've done this before. And so we sat down with Greg, and by that stage we had moved on from Alibaba and had a decent number of quotes for equipment, but we settled on a supplier that was manufacturer direct in China, and Greg, who's now our brewer, started combing through that, and he added a couple of hundred hours of engineering expertise to the process before the equipment landed. And Greg's at the end of that process, he came up to us and said, so who's going to use all this equipment? I was like, that's a pretty good question. We have homebrew knowledge, and I'm sure we can fumble our way through it, but I treated homebrewing a little like cooking, where you know what you want to achieve, you know what the dish is called, but also happy to season it as required. So treated homebrewing a little bit like that, always an experiment, and trying to achieve a better result, whereas Greg certainly adds science to any ideas we come up with, and he adds the repeatability and the expertise, and we still come up with ideas. And he goes on holiday, we do a batch, we fix what he usually does and make it more hoppy, and everyone likes it more, and he comes back and says, what did you do? So we required his his knowledge to actually make it all work. And luckily at the end of that engineering process, he said, yeah, someone's got to make this work. Can I do it? And 3 years later, he's still here brewing beer for us.
Awesome. And it's interesting, my dad used to homebrew, and I've never done one with him, but he used to do it with his dad. And they were in a brewers club, and Dad used to be a telephone technician. So obviously he'd be around a lot of different people's houses, and quite often he'd see that there was some homebrewing equipment there. And he was like, oh, have you homebrewed? And he said he only had to ask enough times to realise that most people's homebrewers are awful, that he should just never mention anything about it ever again.
Yeah. Well, look, homebrew has come a long way since...
That was quite a long time ago.
Yeah. There's a lot of homebrewers have got equipment at least equal to the equipment we've got, just at a different scale.
Yeah.
Even the cheaper all-in-one breweries that you can get from a homebrew shop perform remarkably.
Yeah.
You can make great beer at home these days.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of the ideas are coming out of homebrewers. They're quite inventive, as well as producing quality product. They're interesting.
I know for Dad, he would make a bitter and a stout were the two main beers that he wanted to make. But I think back then home brewing was almost like you did it because it was cheaper than buying beer. So it was quite a simple. It wasn't necessarily getting like fruity and crazy the way that we do now. But it was more just, how do I make a regular beer that I can drink?
Yeah, I suspect that was the motivation a while back, but now homebrewers probably spend more per batch than, it certainly wouldn't be cheaper than some of the inventive stuff that's coming out, like you say, the fruited or over-hopped beers that we just don't do on a big scale that you can do as a 20-litre batch. So,
Awesome. And what's it, so obviously you found from the group of friends that were the parents at school, how old were your kids at the time, around about?
Maybe 7 was the start of the conversation, and they're teenagers now. They're towards the end of their high school years, but look, one of the mums at school was, did all our branding, our logo, done an unreal job, and there are other parents that added other bits and pieces to the journey. And it's been a fairly valuable network, that little school. We've served beer at school fetes and the art show nights, and continue to do that. And it's been a nice lot of support from that local community.
And that was the school in Brisbane? Cool. And so obviously you've met each other, you've found your brewer, you've got all the equipment. At what point did you find the venue?
The venue it's a bit of a journey too. The venue is probably signing the lease is a big commitment. So it was the point at which you go, right, this is real, it's happening. That was the first big financial milestone, I guess. So we looked around Brizzy for a while. We wanted to be fairly central, city fringe or thereabouts. We'd looked around a whole bunch of warehouse style places that were vaguely suitable. At the time, probably 6 years ago, we started looking. Every warehouse thought they were going to get the tap on the shoulder from a developer and be able to sell out for squillions of dollars. So finding a lease that was that gave us enough flexibility or long enough to pay back the investment was pretty tough. Everywhere had demolition clauses just in case that the leasees could get out of the arrangement. But we looked at a few places, went to council with another place for a bit of an opinion on whether they'd let us do it, and they said no chance. So that process it took a while. It's probably we could have done it quicker, but we weren't absolutely desperate because it is that milestone. It gave us time to double check. We were still, both of us worked through that period, so we're still both employed. And yeah, we came across this place, and the landlord was particularly supportive. He was happy with our terms, so we've got a long lease and or long options without demolition clauses, and was happy to engage in what we were undertaking. So a really supportive landlord made it easy to commit.
And I think for me, coming here first Friday of every month, the people who join me for Beers with Mates are appreciative that it's just around the corner. You can go anywhere you want in the valley as well. Like location-wise, it's probably one of the best breweries in Brisbane. Yeah,
we're part of the entertainment precinct. There's a bunch of other options after we close.
Yeah.
It's we like being part of the valley and being in amongst it all, I guess.
Yeah.
So
I think the interesting thing too is I'm sort of mid-30s these days, and while I used to be a little club rat running around the valley back in my 20s, it seems like all of us about our age, this is the thing, we come to a brewery, have some dinner, have a few beers, head hunt.
Yeah.
Finish by sort of 10:30.
That's our crowd.
Most of the time, yeah.
Yep. You sum up our crowd. We're open till midnight, Friday, Saturday, and I'm pretty sure I've kicked you out once or twice, but come midnight, see you later, Chris. You've overstayed. Not welcome anymore. But come back again in a month.
Yeah.
So, yeah, look, our crowd is possibly not the crowd that partaking in the rest of the nightlife around the valley, but it gives us something to do here too. So, yeah.
No, I certainly appreciate that. If I have people on the north side or if I have people on the south side, this is close to transport. It's easy for everyone to get to, and they appreciate it. So look, we were keen to be somewhere fairly central, but we've got good public transport around us, and it is accessible and great street visibility. Yeah.
So I guess the challenges of coming into a place like this were still managing all the production possibilities, I guess. So the brewery isn't a massive space, but it's got pretty good capacity for what we need. So that, again, the building wasn't without its challenges, being an old building in the middle of the city. So funnily enough, there was no gas connected here, and just looking at the 6-lane road out the front, that was a fairly involved process to deliver gas to the building, but that was just one of those challenges that we had setting up. So
and just thinking about starting a brewing business, where did you start with the range of beers, and what's happened since then?
Look, where we started was you do require a range. We started with what we liked that had variance and difference, so no point having 10 pale ales, but you need a couple of crowd pleasers, and interestingly enough, one of them's changed since we opened. The pale ales remain pretty similar and a standard, and it's our biggest seller, but the IPA is similar, where it hasn't changed much since we opened. So there's the lager. When we opened, we started off with a German style Kolsch, so an ale similar to a lager, and it's gone by the wayside and been replaced with something a bit more traditional. It's a bit hoppier, but it's to style, but it's our approachable beer, I guess, and they're the only 3 standards. So when we opened, we thought we'd need a stable range that people would keep coming back for. As it turns out, with three beers is enough to do that, and everything else rotates. So looking at the wall today, there's double IPA, so there's the hoppy end of the spectrum, there's a sweet beer, there's a interesting hard tea, so and 3 of those rotate often, and then the others seem to have, I guess, repetitive crowd favourites that come and go, and
I remember when I first came here, obviously driving as well, that I could get a semi-dark beer that was low alcohol. That was quite interesting for me too. What is that still around, or
it's
depends
one
on the year? Depends on the season.
No, it'll get brewed again in the next couple of weeks. So that's turned into a once a year offering. So around winter we'll produce a 2.9% English milds is a style of beer it is, but it was popular for the first year we made it, but it didn't sell particularly well over COVID. So it's turned into a once a year thing. But again, it was something that we intended. When we opened, we intended to make that a year-round beer. But the consumers of our crowd have dictated that that's a once-a-year beer. So that's something we've learned.
Yeah. And thinking about the beer that you would usually reach for, is there something, I think, Monday night versus Friday night versus Saturday night, what would be your pick? That is a nice way to phrase that. I was going to say there's 10 of my personal favourites on the wall in my biased opinion. They're all great, but look, you do feel like different things at different times. There's some beers up there that just aren't to my palate, and I possibly only have them to taste their quality. But that's important to make a range to entice people that don't want to drink the same commercial beer or the same craft beer even that over and over. Of course, there are Monday maybe you do feel like just drinking pale ale or chitter chatter. Today is Monday. Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And so, in terms of, obviously you've got this great space down here. I love that you've got the ability to have a massive space upstairs as well. And it seems like you've got some groups who are able to come through and fill that space and have big events there. Like, venue-wise, for me, running events that I would hope would be anywhere between sort of 20 and 100 people is so great to be at a brewery that has that ability to do that depending on the night, or even more than 100 if I really did well.
Yeah. So. You can do better.
Yeah.
We can cater for 300 upstairs. So it's a big old space. It's different to the downstairs. So downstairs you're in amongst the brewery. It's part of whilst production doesn't often happen in while the venue's open, there's often activity in the brewery. So you're part of it on a different level, but you can see in there, it's supposed to be somewhat integrated, meaning you know that you're in a production facility and you're drinking the beer that was designed and made here.
Yeah.
Upstairs is its own little vibe. It's a big old hall. It was a ballroom dancing hall for 30 years. The older listeners will remember it as Orchid's Dance Studio, and it taught a lot of Brisbaneites how to ballroom dance, ready for their weddings. But it's now a big old hall that caters for all sorts,
Awesome.
including beers with mates. When you get hit the 300,
that's certainly the goal. And so, if you were to think about what would be exciting for you to happen over, let's say, the next 3 months, is it a new beer, or is it getting into new stores? Is it getting more people to the brewery? What's sort of exciting for you?
All of the above. Clearly, that's what we do. So, like this week, we'll release sour stout, a barrel-aged sour red beer. Both of those are the stout's a new beer. The reds are a yearly recurring beer, but we only produce 15 cartons of each, so they're fairly specialised, limited edition sort of things. Before we started talking, Greg and I were talking about the next canning event, which will include at least 1 new release. So we're constantly planning that product cycle, and people want new stuff all the time out of craft breweries, as well as also wanting to just go to what they know. So I don't know what it's like to run a craft brewery, but there's an expectation that the regular beers that you like and enjoy are always exactly the same as when you had them previously, but you also want to try new stuff. So it's sort of a juggling act. It is a juggling act. We don't particularly we follow a guideline and a recipe for each of our repetitive beers. The three that are the lager, the pale, and the IPA. But again, we're a small, fairly low production volume brewery where we're using natural ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
We think that the variance between batches is part of what we do. We're happy for a little bit of variance. I know that wasn't quite what you're asking, but there's always the same pale ale. It might taste a little bit different next time, but it's the same beer. It's got the same name on it. It's just,
Yeah. Well, I think that I think that the interesting thing is that the expectation is that it's both constant and varied out of the same company. I know that you're going to make the same thing that I drink all the time. It's going to be delicious.
Yep.
But regularly, I want to see new beers, and I'm probably not going to drink a lot of them, but I'm going to try them.
Yeah, that's right, and that you sum up pretty much the craft consumer. We need a constant product rotation, but they're fairly low volume and small turnaround. Just do something interesting that people try once. You'll get one person who buys one can as part of a mixed 4-pack at a bottle shop, then come in needing a carton of it because it was the best thing they ever tasted. Yeah. And then the next person that tries it in a paddle will say, "Oh, I'm glad I only had 150 mils of that. That's bloody awful." So they're all technically well-made beers, but everyone's got different tastes and flavours, and that's why we do that constant product testing on you, I guess.
and speaking about the people that come in and drink the beer, obviously you've been doing this for quite a while, meeting a whole lot of people coming through the door. Has it been a similar crowd the whole time? Has that sort of changed? And what generally are their taste buds looking for?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think our crowd has changed too much since day one.
Yeah.
We've got a kitchen that pumps out interesting stuff too, and that's part of their charter is to, we're doing interesting turnover of different beers. We need to do the same thing with the food offerings and just have little tastes there, or a standard. If you want the standard that you used to every time you go to the pub, no worries, we can do that just like a pale ale. Or that's not to say we don't do different pale ales either, but there's something there that you always know, or there's a little taste that might be unique and different.
And I think also, typically when I come here, I'm coming from work, and so like the dinner option will always be good, and I like popcorn chicken or sliders or something like that, like very much crowd pleasers. But there's also delicious options that just pop up here and there. That, like, there was a pork knuckle I had here one night. I remember that was a little while ago, probably during Oktoberfest or something like that.
An Oktoberfest special, but they were pretty special. Very memorable.
It was cool. Well, it is cool. To always be able to come here, know that I enjoy the beers. Good to have people here that I want to speak to. But the food here is also spot on. So.
Yeah, well, it's the same theory as that we were just talking about with craft beer. It's you've got to have the crowd pleasers, but also the little bits of interest that do either challenge or tempt. So we've got some beers like that too. So looking at the board, there's a margarita sour up there. That's not for everyone, but it's a taste difference. So it's for me, but it's not for everyone. We do have beers like that are just made for us.
Well, it's also the case that for those sorts of different beers, you only need to have one. But you don't necessarily need to have a pint either to still have enjoyed the beer.
No, that's right.
Like, it's a different flavour just to have that and then go to something else.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're always looking for those opportunities.
And is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we wrap up for today?
Like what?
Anything you like? Yeah.
I don't know. I thought we're almost finished. We've almost finished our beer. Yeah. So I was thinking maybe we're going to press pause before we.
Well, let's do that.
Right.
Let's do that. And we're back. Luke, what are we drinking?
Well, it's all gone. We paused to rehydrate, but we might Might need to pause again. We're both empty again, Chris. What happened? You forgot to turn the machine on.
Well, I guess we were just talking about what it is that we could talk about, and one of the things that I think was interesting for me, being able to come to Soapbox regularly for beers with mates and hanging out with new people and old people and seeing everyone that comes here otherwise, it's interesting for me to be like, oh, what would it be like to run a venue? Who would be the people that would come in to a venue like this?
It's the same crowd you bring. It's an eclectic bunch of Valley regulars and beer lovers, people who are looking for something different. They're largely beer focused. I know that the name of your group's Beer with Mates, but occasionally we've got to serve them wine and other stuff. So maybe you can work on that.
I also run a wine one, so
right.
And it was nice that you have a good wine selection as well at a brewery.
Yeah, look, that trying to cater for everyone because we are central. That includes food and other bits and pieces of drinking options too, including now the non-alcoholic stuff, which has been a bit of a new popular pursuit. But yeah, your cruise sort of sums us up. We do cater for everyone, or try to in some form. That doesn't mean if you ask for a 4X Gold you won't be asked to leave, but barring that, there's something for everyone.
And thinking about some of the events that you run here, if you think about trivia, is it a different crowd or is it fairly similar?
Yeah, look, the trivia crowd are here for trivia. They're here to show how smart they are, don't worry. They come, they're a good regular crowd. They turn up every Wednesday. They wouldn't necessarily come here on a Friday, but they're dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge.
But they do come every Wednesday.
Yeah, they're a good regular crowd. They're into their... Look, they like the fact that it's at a craft brewery. It's a point of difference for a trivia night. So they're largely beer lovers, but they come here for our host, Nellie, who's very engaging, loves trivia, and it's a good night out. So yeah, it's a good regular crowd. It's often the same faces because it is just what they're looking for.
And the lunch crowd?
Lunch crowd, yeah, we've got a bunch of local businesses around here that are very supportive. So when offices are working at full steam, yeah, lunch it's a good day out on a Friday.
Awesome.
To have lunch at a pub.
What about dates? Do you get many people coming in using this as a dating venue?
Sure, to your meetup group mostly. Yeah, look, I'm sure it is. The discretion of the barman, though, couldn't really say.
Yep.
Except to say, we did have one girl who was using us as a Tinder meet point, and rather innocently, the bar staff got to know her and said, "Oh, who's your friend this week?" Which wasn't what was fairly innocent. They got to know her, okay, but every week it was a new date. Things, yeah. Sooner or later she was going to get a repeat date, I'm sure, but not the way that it was working at the time.
And so, obviously, we've been doing this for quite a while now. Is there someone that you would love to have, or is there some sort of patron that you would love to have more of? If you could think of a market that you know comes in, has a good time, spends a bit of money, who would you put that? What would that market be?
The ideal customer? I'm pretty happy with our current clientele. Anyone who's repeat business is coming back because they like the place, and they're the sort of people that we want to see more often. We do have lots of regulars who want to try the new beers that we're putting out, who are embracing what we are, meaning that the brewery. And yeah, we've got a good bunch of them, a good crowd, including Beers with Mates.
Awesome.
I guess you keep turning up. Why do you keep turning up?
because it's one of the best located breweries in Brisbane, and the beer's delicious. Beer and food is delicious. And I think the other thing is, what makes it easy for me, you guys are easy to deal with.
Yeah, look, we like hosting you, so that...
Yeah.
And the crowd you bring is our crowd.
Yeah. And I guess if you haven't been to Soapbox and you maybe haven't had a beer poured from one of the taps, where do you buy your beer otherwise?
Yeah, we're in local indie bottle shops in Cairn. Our friends at the Jazz Club are underwater this week, but they serve our beer on tap exclusively. And there's a couple of little places around town that you'll find us on tap, mostly the rotational craft beer bars. So they'll put on one keg of something. We're at Suburban Socials, 2 locations this week. We're at Netherworld tomorrow. We're around the place, but yeah, including the packaged stuff in about 30, 40 of the local independent bottle shops. Yeah, Chris, you hit pause, and now there's a stack of glasses on the table. I'm not sure why you didn't hit record, but here we go again. With the benefit of empty glasses, I was just saying that in setting up the business, I'd been self-employed my whole life, went to the bank to get the dough, and which seemed like a good idea. The bank couldn't get past the idea that there was going to be a year between them giving us the money, us setting it up, and there being any income. So never got the money from the bank, but with this place, we've got the donation box on the bar at the moment. We're overacting and proud. We had the benefit of a tragedy in the family that meant we had an inheritance, which was the result of ovarian cancer. Megan's mum passed away, and turns out she wanted us to open a brewery. So when I went to Megan and said, "Nah, surely your mum wanted us to open a brewery with her inheritance, everything she's worked for her whole life needs to be our dream as well." She said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, look, I'm mid-40s, I'm going to have a midlife crisis soon, so I guess the options are, realistically, we can put all that money into a fast car, probably red sports car, won't fit the kids in, but that's fine, I'm cool with that. You can come in the car occasionally too, so would you like that?" No. There wasn't a great response, so I needed other options. So we can open a brewery. There's a fantastic idea. Everyone's a winner. Beer for all. And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, I can have an affair, so I'll leave it with you. You make the choice." And here we are many years later with a brewery, and I think the correct choice was made. No midlife crisis. That was averted through the generosity of beer.
And obviously you've run your own business before, freelance work. Is it different being a freelancer versus running a brewery? Yeah,
look, I'm sitting here with my very best mullet and handlebar moustache. Clearly I'm self-employed. Even when I was a freelancer, you're still employed to do a job by someone else. So it's a slightly different, just contract work, I guess, be it a one-day contract or a 6-month contract. So yeah, I am my own boss, but that also comes with its challenges. It's part of the attraction of running a place is you can do exactly what you want, but it's also you are responsible. So there's no other fallback. There's no blame. It all comes back on our shoulders. So that's small business. Yep.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I don't think I fully appreciated what that was like until I went through a similar situation where I was a commission-only salesperson, and everything had been reasonably easy up until then. And if I didn't sell anything, I didn't have any money.
That's right. That's up to you.
So eventually, you just need to get your shit together.
Yeah. Did you get hungry, or you got your shit together?
I was pretty hungry, and eventually I got my shit together, but it didn't work out as easily as I thought it would.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What were you selling?
I was selling mutual funds and insurance, then eventually real estate.
Right.
So, yeah.
Not beer?
Not beer at the time, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to be beer assisted.
Beer assisted real estate sales, you reckon?
Exactly.
Meet at the bar on Friday. Let's have a chat about selling your place.
Correct. Yeah. Do all your deals. Turn up with a 4-pack of Soapbox Beer.
Listing presentations in the corner.
That's right.
Midday onwards from on Friday.
I'll give you that room over there. Yeah. Chris's room. No worries.
It sounds entertaining. I'm not sure if the clients will catch on, but we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah. We'll see who gets with the program. Yeah.
But I do think one of the big things that I'd like as part of me running a business is, or not necessarily running a business, but sort of running my own thing, being my own real estate agent, making my own money, is that, I run beers with mates, I drink your beer, I invite my clients to, have a 4-pack of beer when I meet them, you know?
Yes.
So...
but who wouldn't?
Exactly, yeah. So,
No worries, Chris. Cheers.
Cheers.
What do you think of this lager?
Let me just double check. It's easy drinking. It's sort of, there's sort of like, it's not a lime or something like that, but there's a slight sourness.
Yeah, the hops used are Mandarina Bavaria, so it's got a citrus note to it.
Yep.
And it's probably a little bit hoppier than a traditional lager should be, so there's where some of that flavour is coming from.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's definitely got more flavour than a Corona with lime, but there's still that lime flavour.
Yes, correct. I'm not sure Corona's
Spit
got
that
flavour.
out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no comment necessary.
I also don't really drink lager, you know.
Yeah.
Like at the moment, I've got Pilsner at the home in my fridge. If I come here, I drink the IPA, and I'll have the hazy at the moment. Yeah. But otherwise, when you had the Sarsaparilla Porter, that was a big favourite of mine. Yeah. And then obviously the pale ale is easy to get to. And then if I'm driving, then I'll obviously look at some other options. And you do have some.
Shit, Chris, is there anything you don't like?
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with all of it. Obviously, as you say, the margarita is, I'd have a glass of it, but I wouldn't have a session on it for me personally.
That's fair.
But that's how I feel about all sours. They're just not necessary for me. But I would drink a stout on a sunny Saturday in Brisbane as well.
You like what you like.
Exactly.